Woo! It's the boy, Bubba, Lutz coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's your boy, Bubba, Lutz. Yeah, I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake. So tell me who's the GOAT.
Welcome back, Bubba Bunch, to another edition of the Bubba Lutz Sports Podcast. It is episode 187, and today we're going to be going through our predictions from earlier in the season, our awards predictions for MVP, Offensive Rookie of the Year, all that good stuff. We're already into week 10, week 11 of the NFL, so it's a good time to look back and see how our predictions are going. I did this with Kevin, but unfortunately he cannot make it for today's episode, so keep him in your minds and in your prayers. But for now, we're just going to focus on my predictions. We're going to split it up into where this is going to be the awards section, and we're also going to be doing another episode on buying and selling predictions for playoff teams or borderline playoff teams, and do we really think they're going to be solid Super Bowl contenders for the second half of the season and going into the playoffs later on this year. So keep that in mind for later on this week. We're also going to be doing winners and losers. We're going to be doing the prediction and preview for the Cowboys game against the Minnesota Vikings this weekend. And man, it's been hectic this last few weeks. Been trying to adjust to the new job. So today is going to be focused on all podcasts that I have for this week. So if I'm wearing the same shirt, then don't bother, asking. Just don't mind. Just move on. But I mean, it is a nice, kit. It's the PSG. I mean, I love it. I just ordered like $500 worth of PSG stuff. So keep your mouth shut to anybody who asks. Okay, so let's get into the awards. And yeah, I did a little bit of research. Based on the statistics, based on the performances of these people. I've basically ranked them into a who's number one right now. If we were to end the season right now, who would win that award? But also I want to look at some other candidates that could possibly take over, and I think that are dark horses for winning this award. So let's go through my predictions at the beginning of the season and say, who did I expect to really take over at this point of the season? Let's start off with the MVP, of course. Now, on the MVP, my conversation was that I think there is the flashy MVP candidate and the obvious MVP candidate that should be considered based on the fact that it is the most valuable player, not only on their team, but in the NFL. For my flashy player, that was Lamar Jackson, who is most likely going to win the award because of how flashy, how exhilarating and electric they are on the football field. You have to consider that Patrick Mahomes is the obvious favorite for winning this award. He's on the best team in the NFL. He has the most weapons in the NFL. The guy is one of the greatest talents that we've seen in our generation and previous generations, to say the least. And this guy could go down as the greatest quarterback of all time. And he's only, 22, 23? I mean, he's around my age, right? That's sad. But good thing is that when you pay that man $500 million, you expect to get those MVPs up. And it's an incentive for him. He makes more money and he makes the full contract if he wins the award and he wins Super Bowls. So this is very important for Patrick Mahomes to get his money. And right now, Chiefs are rolling. They had the bye week this week, so you don't have to worry about them. But he has been playing at such a high caliber this entire season. And early part of the season, it was on the down low considering how good this other player was. But I think right now this is a tight race for the MVP because my other candidate that should win the award mostly every year is the front runner for this right now, but is dipping significantly in his lead in the MVP race, and that's Russell Wilson. Let's go back to the first 4 weeks of the season. This man did not throw an interception. This man was throwing nothing but touchdowns. He was throwing more touchdowns himself than the other team was scoring touchdowns. It is incredible to see how good of a stretch Russell Wilson was on at the very early part of the season and how easy it was for him to do so. And he put a Seahawks team that was rebuilding on defense, and in a sense still is, but put them on his back and led them to so many victories. I mean, they started off so hot. But here's the problem, is that I still think Russ is still the front runner for the MVP race. But the way that these last 3 or 4 games have been going, this man is throwing a lot more interceptions. He's making a lot of bad decisions. The Seahawks are dipping. They're losing football games. They just lost yesterday against the Los Angeles Rams, who I'm not high on either. But they look stale. It was the first game in 11 straight games where Russell Wilson did not throw a touchdown. He only had, 2 interceptions? And the last time that he played the Rams was the last time he didn't have a touchdown. So this is a recurring factor with him in the Los Angeles Rams. But what I'm seeing these last few games, like he did really well against the Buffalo Bills, but that defense could not stop Josh Allen. You're seeing a really disintegrating defense cost them games, and you're seeing a Russell Wilson that's starting to do too much in a sense. He's forcing the ball down the field, and a lot of those interceptions that he had over the last 2 weeks have shown that, especially that one yesterday when I was watching the Rams game, where he has open field in front of him on the right side of the field. I think he only has one defender. If he beats that one defender, he's in the end zone, and that's an easy touchdown for him. But he decides to go to Will Dissly on the opposite side of the field, who was open for much of his route, but once he found the end zone, there was a double team at the top with DK or Tyler Lockett. Or no, it was Greg Olsen. And one of those defenders went back to Dissly and just read Russell Wilson's throw. And that's just a horrible throw no matter who you are. But I feel like that's one of those plays to where you feel that Russell Wilson's doing too much. And Michael Vick did say this on the Herd today, where you start seeing forced balls. You're trying to do too much as a quarterback because you're seeing your defense struggle. You want to make those plays, but it's just not working out. You're seeing that week after week with Russell Wilson. And when we look at the stats, we're seeing that Russell Wilson still leads a lot of the stats over Patrick Mahomes, whether it's yards, touchdowns. But the performances that Patrick Mahomes is putting up, alongside Aaron Rodgers is still in this race as well, because Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers have very similar statistics. They have a better passer rating. They have less interceptions, so less turnovers, better QBR. They're right there with each other as far as yards and completion percentage. Russell Wilson just beats them in every category except for interceptions and passer rating. But I feel like those are very important to win this race because you're costing your team a lot of these games and you're putting them in bad situations if you're giving the ball up too many times. Russell Wilson has thrown 10 interceptions. And when we look at Patrick Mahomes, he's only thrown 1. Aaron Rodgers has only thrown 3. That is very important. So I feel like that stat halfway through the season is a good indicator of where we go from here. I think Russell Wilson's still number 1. And Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers are right there with him. But there's also one guy that I talked about last week. And I feel that he should be talked about more than ever. He'll most likely win the Offensive Player of the Year because that goes more to a non-quarterback position. But Dalvin Cook deserves some credit, man. You start to see some of the stats that he's putting up. Behind Derrick Henry, who has more yards than him, I still feel like he is more valuable to the Minnesota Vikings than Derrick Henry is to the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill has played very well. They have a really good receiving core. They have a great offensive line. Their defense could use some work. But I do feel like they can be a good football team even without Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is just a beast. But I feel like this is consistently what he does year after year. It's the very similar thing of what Russell Wilson does at the quarterback position, Aaron Rodgers does at the quarterback position. So they don't necessarily get the credit and the votes to win that award every other year. But Dalvin Cook is the flashier player out of the two. And I feel like if you take out Dalvin Cook from Minnesota, this team is a bad football team. They run through Dalvin Cook. And this is just considering his rushing stats. There's not considering his receiving at all either. But we're putting up over 150 yards almost every game except for maybe 1 or 2, and the exception of that one game where he got injured. and then you also consider that he's going with 2 to 3 to 4 touchdowns per game, I'm excited to see what he does against the Chicago Bears defense tonight on Monday night. But right now, I'm seeing this campaign for Dalvin Cook to win the award for MVP because he's so valuable to that Minnesota Vikings team, and no one's talking about it. But Dalvin Cook is my sleeper pick for this second part of the season. If Russ starts to dip, if Patty just continues to do what he does, but doesn't do it at the same flashiness as he did last year, I think Dalvin Cook, if he puts up big numbers like he's done in the first 8-9 weeks of the season, Dalvin deserves a lot more attention for the MVP race. I really do think so. So right now it's number 1 Russ, but he is losing that race very quickly. Patty Mahomes, and then there's Dalvin Cook, because I think that Aaron Rodgers is just playing his brand of football. He is playing what he does. He's just playing like he always does. And I don't think that it wins him the award most years. Let's move on to the Offensive Player of the Year. And right now, my Offensive Player of the Year is a tight race because you can throw in the MVP guys as well. Like I said, Dalvin Cook, if he doesn't win the MVP race, it's most likely not going to go to a quarterback for Offensive Player of the Year. So Dalvin Cook might win that award. But also, if we're considering another quarterback, he was my prediction for the early part of the season. And I think he's right there up there in the top 3, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, with that offense, was going to be impressive. He was a part of my sleeper team in the NFC this season. What he did yesterday should prove to you that he's in that conversation. Credit to DeAndre Hopkins for what he did with that Hail Mary catch. That 6XL hands in those gloves is something else, man. But that throw by Kyler Murray should be up there as well with the hype and the praise for what he did. Man can run read option better than anybody in the NFL. And I've never seen read option play that well and ran that well since probably Robert Griffin III in his first season with Washington. But what Kyler Murray's doing, man, he's just having fun. He's just playing high school football. Ever since week 1, ever since when he got drafted a few years ago, and ever since he got partnered up with Cliff Kingsbury, the man is playing high school football like he did at Allen over in Dallas. I mean, this guy is incredible what he is doing. And Offensive Player of the Year is what I predicted out of him at the beginning part of the season. I have Dalvin Cook winning this award right now because realistically, he's not going to win MVP. But if Dalvin Cook doesn't win Offensive Player of the Year, there's no doubt in my mind that award goes to Kyler Murray for what he's doing. It's incredible what he's doing with his feet, with his arm, with his decision-making, and what relationship he's built so far with DeAndre Hopkins is incredible. And not to mention the leadership part of it. I mean, this guy is very, very tough, very disciplined, considering how flashy and just how young he is. He doesn't look like a leader. I feel like that's kind of going in the direction of the NFL. You start to see a lot of these guys like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, who you see and you're like, these guys look like they belong in high school. Like, they don't even look like the Tom Bradys, the Peyton Mannings. They don't look like the typical look of a franchise quarterback. But it's the new generation, and we'll take what we can get. He's talking to DeAndre Hopkins about running his routes and being very strict on him alongside his other wide receivers. It's impressive. I mean, he's even talking to Larry Fitzgerald about what he can do better. And that is a very hard thing to do as a very young quarterback in the NFL with these veterans. But he's doing that at a very nice pace and a very nice way that can ease his way into many years into the NFL. And he can be the franchise quarterback for this very young and hot Arizona Cardinals team for many years to come. A very impressive Offensive Player of the Year candidate in Kyler Murray. Let's move on to Defensive Player of the Year, who I predicted would be J.J. Watt. Bill O'Brien made sure that didn't happen with the sorry-ass excuse of a start to a season and the trade with DeAndre Hopkins. the way that they played in the first, month of the season, and he gets fired immediately. Good riddance to Bill O'Brien, but the damage was done. And J.J. Watt, even though he hasn't been dealing with the injuries like he's had in the past, this season, with a 2-7 football team in Houston, it is very hard for a guy like J.J. Watt to put up the numbers that we expect out of him with a very bad defense in Houston. So J.J. Watt is nowhere near a candidate in the Defensive Player of the Year race. But it is a huge group of candidates. I mean, these guys are big and strong, and they're scary. Right now, based on the stats and how dominant these guys have been, it's a long list, but it's mostly the guys up front that are doing the work right now. Number 1, Myles Garrett leads the NFL in tackles for loss, total tackles, sacks. He has 9.5 compared to Aaron Donald's 9. I mean, I love what the Cleveland Browns are doing defensively. They only held Houston to 7 points this past weekend, and a lot of it has to do with the tenacity that is Myles Garrett up front. He should win this award almost every year. He has Aaron Donald next to him, right behind him at number 2, who has 9 sacks, who's right there with him in total tackles, sacks, tackles for loss, fumbles. I mean, we're talking about 2 of the scariest guys to ever play the sport, and we're seeing them battle for this award. At number 3, I have TJ Watt on the undefeated Steelers team. Very impressive for him to watch, and I think that Cowboys game was the epitome of how good TJ Watt is and how just dumb it is for the Cowboys to not pick him up in the draft so many years ago. I have some sleeper picks for this award since we're only halfway through the season. There's still some chances for these guys to make some moves. Emmanuel Ogbah with the Miami Dolphins, he is not to the same level as far as sacks and total tackles as Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald are, but considering how good the Miami Dolphins defense is at creating turnovers and being so physical up front, it is because of Emmanuel Ogbah and creating turnovers up front as well. He is just so fun to watch. And considering how good the Miami Dolphins are halfway through the season at 6-3, Emmanuel is a good reason why they're playing really good defensive football and is what Brian Flores brings to the table as far as physical and tenacious defense. And then if we want to throw in one more name, it's my other sleeper pick on my sleeper team. It is Budda Baker, number 32, who is playing like the honey badger that was Tyrann Mathieu in his early seasons with Arizona. He plays so much like Tyrann did in his early parts of his career, and he can throw. You can throw him at any part of the field, and I feel like Budda's always there. He can create turnovers. He can get the big hits, the big plays, and he can rush the quarterback. Very similar to what Tyrann Mathieu does, similar to what Jamal Adams does with the Seattle Seahawks. I love watching Budda Baker play. I love him to death. So if we're not going with the big boys up front, Budda Baker is right there. I mean, he is top 10, top 15 as far as total tackles alongside Ogbah, alongside Watt, and those other guys I talked about. And you can create the turnovers, like I said. The man should be considered for this award, considering how beefy it is up front. But Budda Baker, man, I love watching him. And I'm excited to see what he does for the second part of the season with that really good Vance Joseph-led defense in Arizona. Offensive Rookie of the Year. My Offensive Rookie of the Year coming into the season was going to be either, I put up 2 names, it was going to be either Jerry Jeudy, who was drafted by the Denver Broncos, alongside Courtland Sutton. I think it was a really good group of guys that would benefit Jerry with his route running ability and his ability to get better matchups alongside Courtland. And he's doing really well. I think considering the struggles of Denver with their injuries, their lack of Drew Lock being healthy, and Courtland Sutton going down, KJ Hamler dealing with injuries as well. Just a lot going on in Denver. This is not their season. They're trying their best, but it's just not their season. I think Jerry Jeudy putting those highlights of his route running ability like he did yesterday is just a really good sign for Jerry and his long stand in the NFL. It's just not putting up the numbers like you expect. And there's plenty of other wide receivers that are ahead of Jerry Jeudy as far as stats go, so it kind of puts Jerry to the side. So my other pick was going to be J.K. Dobbins because I thought the fit in Baltimore with that really good running game and his just versatility at that position, what he did in Ohio State and what he brought to the table to Baltimore. I think once Mark Ingram leaves, J.K. Dobbins is going to be the guy, and I felt like with the system that would be run in Baltimore, it would benefit him very well. I don't know. I want to see more out of J.K. I know he shows glimpses of what he can do. Mark Ingram's going to be the number one guy, of course, but Gus Edwards has been doing really well as the third string running back in Baltimore. And, of course, Baltimore's just kind of up in the air for me, and we'll talk about them in the other episode. But I don't know. I was kind of throwing a shot in the dark about J.K., and that really hasn't worked out yet. So right now, Offensive Rookies of the Year, they're going to the quarterbacks right now, of course, with Justin Herbert leading the way. I don't think anyone expected how good Justin Herbert was going to be as the starter, let alone the starting quarterback in Los Angeles with the Chargers. I expected him to sit out the season. Tyrod Taylor was going to be the guy for the 16 games, and then maybe throw in Justin at the end of the season, but go with him in 2021. And with the problems, the chest pains that Tyrod Taylor dealt with in the Kansas City Chiefs game right before kickoff, you throw in Justin Herbert and you expect him to do okay. The man has done nothing but great things as the starting quarterback for the Chargers. And even though they are a 2-7 football team, he has put them in positions to win. And of course, he's going to have the rookie mistakes. But I feel like there has been more positive than negative, glass half full mentality with Justin Herbert. And I am super excited to see what he can do once he gets his feet under him in the NFL. I mean, he already has done that, but just give him a year of fully transition into the NFL. I'm excited to see what he can do. Because, oh my God, man. Like, if you give them a coach that can finish football games and give them a disciplined mentality, this team should win more than 80% of their games. I mean, 2-7, and I think the exception of yesterday's game, I can't remember the score, they have lost every game by one possession or less. They should be a 7-2 football team at least. It is astonishing to me how bad they are at finishing football games, but none of it has to deal with Justin Herbert. I mean, when we look at the stats, where is Justin Herbert? Because second on this list is Joe Burrow. And considering how bad of an offensive line he's had in Cincinnati, he has found Tyler Boyd. He has found T. Higgins a lot. And the injuries to Joe Mixon, he has Giovanni Bernard behind him, which is not the most exciting thing in the world. But when you don't have an offensive line, it is very hard to do the things that Joe Burrow is doing. And they're right there with each other as far as the stats go, but Justin Herbert has a better completion percentage. He has more projected-wise, Joe Burrow has more yards, but he's also played one more game than Justin Herbert has. So that 100-yard difference is not going to be anything once Justin Herbert gets another game under him. Has a better yards per game, has a better passer rating, has more touchdowns, has less interceptions. It's really good for Justin Herbert, considering the circumstances in Los Angeles. But it's that shock factor should really be considered as the main reason why he should win this Offensive Rookie of the Year award. Is not even myself. I wasn't high on Justin Herbert because I wasn't high on his decision making and his accuracy. I felt Joe Burrow was going to be the better of the two on that. But Justin Herbert has really proved me wrong and proved a lot of people wrong. And considering that he was thrown into the Wolves against Kansas City, the Super Bowl winning team last year, and has been consistently doing great things against great teams, and even though they're not getting the W, he has put them in situations to win football games every single week. And for a guy that is taking over like he has so easily, but also so suddenly, Justin Herbert should win this award, hands down. Joe Burrow is number 2. If we're talking about non-quarterback positions, because I think Tua is a far-fetch for this award. I get it. He's 3-0 as the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, but he's not putting up the real numbers like Herbert and Burrow are. And I think that if Tua is just the non-turnover player that Ryan Fitzpatrick is. And he just makes the right decisions. He doesn't turn the ball over. And he gets like 200, 250 yards a game, maybe a touchdown or two. He'll be fine, but it's not enough to win the award. So then we look at some other positions. Wide receiver. Justin Jefferson is the front runner for that. Alongside T. Higgins, these guys are just balling out. And Justin Jefferson, when we look at the stats for like receivers, I mean, he's no Stephon Diggs. He's no DeAndre Hopkins. But Justin Jefferson's taking over games like Dalvin Cook is when he's not playing. And Justin Jefferson is a very versatile wide receiver. And the fact that he's had to take over the position and take over the role that Stephon Diggs had last year, he has made it easier for Adam Thielen, but he has become the number one weapon for Kirk Cousins in this offense, who is not the most consistent group in the world, but without Justin Jefferson and without Dalvin Cook, this Minnesota Vikings team has nothing to look forward to in the future. But Justin Jefferson has taken over this wide receiver core, and Kirk Cousins is lucky to have him. So if we're not looking at quarterbacks, we're looking at Justin Jefferson. And the other guy who has not been considered enough because of a consistent play in Jacksonville, it's James Robinson, running back for the Jaguars. Dude's just week after week, despite how bad their quarterbacks are in Jacksonville, and they're just waiting for Trevor Lawrence to get there. They have their future running back in James Robinson. The man runs harder than anybody else in the NFL. He gets those extra yards. He fights for those extra yards. And he's a shorter running back, but he's also physical, and he's also so strong that they have some offense in Jacksonville, no matter who the quarterback is. And when we had to think about life after Leonard Fournette, I don't think we expected it to be so fluently into the next part, past the next era, past Leonard Fournette. I didn't expect it to be this easy for the Jacksonville with James Robinson. And the fact that he's just a rookie, I'm excited to see what he can do with Trevor Lawrence next year if they end up getting him in the draft. So keep an eye on James Robinson. He is going to lose football games with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but look at his numbers. It is exciting to see him do work in Jacksonville, considering how bad they are. Look at the defensive rookies of the year. A good group of guys. I think this can be a toss-up in the second half of the season. Right now, my pick is Jeremy Chinn with the Carolina Panthers, a young group on the defensive side that, to me, should be considered a sleeper pick in the years to come. They are a very young group on both sides of the field, but Matt Rule has done a very phenomenal job, and their defense has a lot of draft picks on there, especially up front, but also in the backfield, and Jeremy Chinn is one of those guys. But he has, I think, total 40 tackles, which is some of the best in the NFL, and he is just statistically, efficiency-wise, one of the best safeties in the NFL. And if you want to take up another guy, rookie-wise, that is right there with him as far as efficiency, and a really surprising pick for this award, considering that I didn't like his tape from college. I didn't think he would fit well into most defenses in the NFL. But Jalen Johnson coming out of Utah, going to the Chicago Bears, who needed that help on the backfield in their secondary because they got rid of a lot of their guys. Jalen Johnson has really taken over that position at a very fast pace and has impressed me a lot because I tell you, man, I wasn't high at all on Jalen Johnson. I didn't think he should be a top 3-round pick in the draft. But what he's done with Chicago has done, he's really proven me wrong. And I love what Jalen has done with the Chicago Bears. He makes some rookie mistakes, and he's done that, especially with a good group of Chicago Bears defense. I love Jalen Johnson and what he's done. Do I think he's going to win the award? No, because Jeremy Chinn has been better. But I also have another guy in front of Jalen, which is Patrick Queen. Jesus Christ, if you want to talk about great fits It is the linebacker core of Baltimore getting Patrick Queen in the draft, one of the biggest steals in the draft. It was a match made in heaven, right? And even though that Patriots game was a struggle for Patrick Queen, I think consistency-wise, he has been the best fit out of anybody on the rookie side for defenses, and he's putting up the numbers, he's putting up the efficiency. So it's got to be either Chin or Queen as the defensive rookie of the year, but Jalen Johnson's also up there as a top 3 pick. Let's finish it off with comeback player of the year. I think this is the easiest award to give out because there's only 2 names that come to mind, but at number 1, it's obviously got to be Big Ben Roethlisberger and the 9-0 Steelers leading the way, coming back from that elbow injury last year, dealing with all of the issues in the offseason. The man has just been spoiled with weapons, but he is making it work better than ever, considering that he has Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Eric Ebron, James Conner. The guy can do no wrong. I'm not even mentioning James Washington. This guy is wheeling and dealing. The arm never looked better, and he is staying healthy. He got banged up in the Dallas Cowboys game and that knee that looked really bad, but he came back and finished off that game. It's typical Big Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, and I was very wrong about Big Ben. I thought he was going to really struggle this season. I thought the Steelers were going to struggle this season. Boy, was I wrong. So I am sorry in Pittsburgh. I'm loving what they're doing. They are a huge, huge favorite in the AFC. If there's one name that could really come about at Comeback Player of the Year, it's the name that I mentioned at the early part of the season, Aldon Smith with the Cowboys, coming back after, 4 or 5 years of not playing football with all the off-season issues, or off-the-field issues, He has done enough, and he has done great things with the Cowboys defense that is on the up and up these last few weeks, and a lot of it has to do with the play of their edge rushers and their linebackers like Randy Gregory and Aldon Smith. But he has earned himself a long-term contract, hopefully with the Cowboys. Look, it hasn't been smooth sailing in Dallas, and Aldon Smith has had his struggles. But if there's a guy that has really deserved to be mentioned in this award category, it should be Aldon Smith. You can probably throw in Cam Newton, but come on, man. Let's be realistic. He's throwing for 100 yards per game. He's more of a running quarterback. It fits more to the system that Josh McDaniels is running in New England. They're still a losing football team, and they're really based on the running game. So can Cam Newton really do much to win the award? No. And then there's Alex Smith with a great story, but if you're throwing 30 interceptions in a game, you're not going to make yourself a really good argument at Comeback Player of the Year. So it's Big Ben's award to win. Aldon Smith, the only one that can give him some trouble, but Big Ben's really done great things at winning that award. I think the only other award to talk about is the Coach of the Year. I had Bruce Arians winning this award, but I think the 2 front runners right now are, of course, the 9-0 Pittsburgh Steelers with Mike Tomlin. But come on, man, you should really, really talk about Brian Flores in Miami. What he's done in the last year and a half with his football team, considering that they were in tank mode last year, which was not the case. They were in rebuilding mode. They're 6-3 this season, number 2 in that division. They are well on their way to win a wild card in the playoffs, but they're so physical. They're so well coached on all facets of their team, special teams, offense, defense. And now putting 2 in was a real risk as a coach, but it's proving dividends. And I think Bruce Arians should win that award, even though we got an undefeated team in Mike Tomlin. Now, if they go 16-0, give it to Mike Tomlin. But if they start to lose some football games, and they're just cruising past the season to get ready for the playoffs, and Brian Flores continues to do what he does in Miami, give that award to Brian. He deserves it. He really does. All right. That's going to do it for the mid-season awards for the NFL. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to come back and talk about the teams themselves, whether we're going to buy or sell that they're Super Bowl contenders. So watch out for that. And we're going to talk about winners and losers later on in the week as well, once I get done watching the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears game tonight on Monday night. If the Minnesota Vikings can give me 4 points on their defense, I can win my fantasy football game this weekend. Dear God, please don't give Nick Foles any touchdowns. For the love of God, I swear if Nick Foles balls out and puts up the performance of a lifetime, I'm going to give up on fantasy football. But until next time, we'll see you on the Bubble Sports Podcast.
Yeah, hold on. Tell me who's your top 5 quarterbacks right now, dead or alive, huh? And how much do you care about a ring if the best player got carried by the team? Now, would you lose if it been a better draft pick?